More to Marketing. Welcome to More to Marketing, the podcast that explores marketing, product, and everything business. I'm your host, Susan Walsh, and today we're exploring the topic why you need to start with science and understand how buyers buy before proceeding with any other work. So this is a really interesting topic, so all about science and the understanding. And I have a very special guest today. I'd love to welcome Jack. So Jack here has actually developed a whole pile of countless brand strategies and developed countless brand assets. He really is all about brand building. He's been recognized as one of the top 1% consultants in Upwork. And if you've never heard of that, you should have, because it's one of the world's largest consultant marketplaces. And he is in the top 1%. He specializes in helping companies with brand diagnostics, brand tracking, brand architecture, brand strategy, brand asset development, and most importantly, and I have to say the most important element to me, is brand growth. So welcome, Jack. It's lovely to have you here.
Hi, Susan. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to chat to you.
Fantastic. Tell me a bit more about yourself, about what you've been doing, and a bit about your career too would be awesome.
Yeah, a bit about the career. Like every good brand strategist, I started off doing a Bachelor of Pharmacy, where we all start. So
Yep. That's definitely an interesting start.
yes, that's where I like to tell people it all began because yeah, it's a very unusual starting point. But it did. I did that degree because I love science. I love the scientific method, and yes, science is still important to me. Obviously, you've talked about a little bit about that in the intro there, but I started there, then started to realize about halfway through that degree it probably wasn't going to be for me long term. Liked the science, didn't really like the job. So I started trying to build businesses, and I remember the very first thing I sold online was actually a logo through
Nice.
Freelancer, I think it was. And then I went to, at the time, I think it was Odesk to get someone to actually make the logo. And
Yep.
I'm like, oh wow, I can be this salesperson and build this team. I lost money on that first. I lost money on that first project
That's
because
okay. It's a learning, isn't it?
exactly. But it did start that. Um, it triggered something in me just to keep trying to build businesses, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time was marketing, but over the next
Mm.
couple of years I learned. Someone said to me, oh, okay, so you're a marketer, as I was doing this type of work. Hadn't really heard the word at the time, didn't really know what it was. But yeah, so I learned a bit more about marketing, then got into a role as the head of marketing for a franchise chain called Burrito Bar. And I was
Mhm.
there for 4 years, and we grew that into a national brand. So from stores to 32 in a 4 year period, which was quite the education as well.
And a very aggressive growth as well.
Oh, yeah, I think one year it was 14 restaurant openings,
Oh,
which is
wow.
yeah, very hold on for dear life type scenario to be in. But yeah, I've done a lot of work with in tech, so I've worked on the sales side of things as well, like a head of business development for a scale up called Sidekicker, for example. I did actually work for Upwork for a while, the corporate itself. In Brisbane, I was their city manager, like I would do their on the ground type work. Worked as a GM of a technology hub called Fishburners.
Know them well.
Yes, yes. So I was up in Brisbane. Um, yeah, marketing lead for a company called GeoNadir, which is a startup who are launching globally. And then since then, basically, I looked at what I've been doing over my career, and I was like, most of the time, my interest is around brand, and that's what I end up doing within a lot of these roles. Um, Not only that, but I built my own brand called The Push. I started building that at some point in time. It started as an event series for entrepreneurs and business owners, and it's taken on lots of pivots and right turns and whatnot. And 10 years later, I'm still working on that. So it's a marketing and sales lab now. It's a podcast as well. So I do
Yep,
a bit
everyone check it
podcasting
out. The
too.
Push. Make sure you check it out, everyone, and subscribe. It will be in the show notes for you too.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. But yeah, then like starting with my love for my love for science originally, combining that with my love for brand now, I merge the two and try to help companies understand this concept and take an approach to this concept that's often thought of as, esoteric and intangible. You can't grab onto it. What is it? A lot of
Mm,
people have a different definition of it. But yeah, I saw there was room to be informed about the scientific side of it and bring that in to companies in a way that's easy to understand and gives them, a good playbook to build upon and to actually grow their brand.
And I find that really fascinating. And I think you will probably find a whole pile of listeners wanting to understand a bit more. So,
Mhm.
are you able to explain what you mean when start with science, when you're thinking about the context of understanding like buyer behavior and maybe even going down the product route as well?
Yeah, I mean, when I say starting with the science, the reason for that is basically that a lot of things you see that contribute to a purchase, sorry, a lot of things that contribute to a purchase can't be seen. So
Mm,
the discussions that someone has behind the scenes with their family or their peers, what they're thinking about, even when they're on your website, there's a whole range of things that you go, we can't see that, we
yeah.
can't see that from the outside. And the scientific aspect is explores that. Like that's what science does. Its job is to try and pursue truth, right? And so that's what I generally mean when I say start with the science. The other thing you can't see is non-customers of your
Mm,
brand. So a lot of your growth is going to come from people who aren't customers right now. You can't see them. You've got no data around
yep. They're in
what
the
they
future
think there.
somewhere.
Yes, exactly. So trying to shine a light on what you can't see effectively, and that you'll never be able to see with personal experience. Like this is augmenting personal experience. So that's what I mean by that. Asking questions like, how does our category buy? Um, Again, you can't, it's very hard to do that with the data that's in front of you or with your own customer research, because that's could be biased. You also can only see your existing customers. A lot of the time, brands haven't really um, delved into a lot of why customers did buy from them anyway, and especially what was going on in their life that brought them into market or brought them
Mm,
that made them want to purchase something or fix a problem. So that's what I mean, like one side of it, but I also think there's like that scientific methodology side of it, because when we talk about statistical significance, like making sure you talk to enough people before
yep.
you draw a conclusion, that's also important too. You don't want to talk to one customer and then take what they say and just run with it necessarily. There might not be anyone else who thinks like them or who would give you that feedback.
And it's an interesting way to think about it with statistical significance because for some purchases, like corn flour,
Hmm.
who cares? I need corn flour. I can buy whatever brand corn flour. It's not going to be any different if I buy the expensive brand versus the cheap brand. It's corn flour. So statistically, it's going to be very unlikely I'm going to go ask someone what corn flour to buy.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
if I'm wanting to get a new car,
Hmm.
say even a new technology car like an EV or a hybrid, I'm more likely going to be talking to a lot more people, doing a lot more research. So therefore, there is a lot of statistical significance in where am I going to go to research, who am I going to have inform, who am I going to get to actually maybe even pressure me or give me some really good guidance. And
Hmm.
that could change if a business understands that about where to go and target people or target information or understand their funnel better to know when they may be making some more inroads. Like, for example, the car, you might go to 4 car sites, you might go to 2 dealerships, you might talk to 10 friends. That's significant because that brand will want to have touched all of those places
Hmm.
to be able to make sure that that decision comes through with a positive purchase at the end and not a walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's a lot of work they've already done that's going to
Mm,
influence that purchase, and did they think about their brand? If you are talking about cars, did they think about their brand in terms of the experience, say, in the
Mm.
showroom and all that, and all the aspects that are going to influence those people,
Yep.
that then someone else is going to go talk to and go, oh, what do you think of this brand? And they go, well, I went into their shop and they were
The
horrible to deal with.
car was dirty. I was ignored.
Yep.
Or it could be I only had to wait 2 seconds and the car was ready for me versus someone else I had to wait half an hour to do my test drive.
Hmm. Yeah.
All makes a difference, and that's why numbers are important to understand, because the cornflower versus a car, you definitely, you've got different costs there,
Hmm.
different money that you make out of it when you look down further down the line for your revenue as well. So you need to be able to make sure you make those more sound business decisions. And if you've got a bit of that science behind that buying behavior, it does make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's interesting too there because that's where the category is important and to not
Mm.
treat all categories the same. I know that Byron Sharp, president of the Ehrenberg Bass, he often says to people, what brand of microwave do you have?
Mm.
And most people don't know. So in that category, like the concept of brand and building brand is very different, sorry, to say in the car category where, yeah, it might be a status symbol and it has other things attached to it that means the brand means more to the buyer when they buy it. Do you know the microwave brand you have, Susan?
I actually do. I have a Samsung.
Okay. You're the first person that I've asked that question to that knows. So
But that's
yeah,
that's only because I am a little bit on the like brand marketing side.
yeah.
So all my other appliances are Bosch. They're in my
Gotcha. Okay.
kitchen.
Gotcha.
However, I do have Samsung in my laundry.
Okay. There
So
you go.
I'm a Samsung girl, even a Samsung phone girl. Sorry, people that love Apple. I have a bit of a hate for it, but that's because I don't like the user experience. But that's me
Mm,
personally.
hmm. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Well, that's you've got me there because most people go, oh, no idea. No idea. Like I do. I still don't know. And I ask this question. Yeah.
That's
I
pretty
should
bad if
check.
you don't know
I
now.
know. I should check.
You
Anyway.
should just go, it doesn't matter. It still works.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but that's the point, isn't it? That's what I care about. I
Mm,
care about do I put the thing in it, I heat it up, and it works.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it tells me ping when it's ready.
Yes. That's
Very
important.
important, that
I
one.
need that part. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd love to understand a bit more about buyer psychology and how it impacts that overall success for products and services.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a whole pile of key principles about this, but it does come down a bit to buyer behavior. So I'd love to know more about your thoughts, what you've gone through, and what you can share on this too.
Yeah, with this, I think there's a really great example in B2B. Well, firstly, I mean, buyer behavior or buyer psychology, it's very
Mm,
important. Obviously, your product, your service, it has to be needed or wanted.
yep.
But secondly, like there's some good principles in B2B that I think are very valuable to follow when you're trying to sell something to someone. And
Mm,
that being that the typical way that a brand or a company thinks about selling is how do we increase the value or how do we communicate the value? And of course, that's important. But it is one factor I'd argue out of about four. So is the value there? And another factor being, is the pain strong enough to move? Like if I'm
yep.
cruising along at a 2 out of 10 pain, do I really care about, yeah, and I can see the value. Like, okay, thanks, you've got a good product. Yeah, I can see that, but I'm not in pain. I'm not, am I really motivated to move right
Yep.
now? Another point being, is the perceived risk high? And especially this is really important in B2B because people can get fired if they choose the wrong supplier and it
Oh
really
yeah.
stuffs everything up. There's a saying that, yeah, no one got fired for hiring IBM. So, but that's around risk. And I think a
Yeah.
good example of that is when the Australian government a few years ago, they hired IBM to do the census. Do you remember that?
I vaguely do, yes. But do share more.
Well, and IBM stuffed it up. And, like I kind of look at that and go, do we really not see that coming? Like, was IBM really the company to do that?
Are they known for doing that as well?
Yeah, exactly. But you can look at that example and go, well, the people who made that decision were probably making it to protect their jobs and to be able to argue, well, we chose IBM. Like that's safe, right? Like we chose the low risk option. Um, but that's not value. That's risk, right? And the fourth point is around perceived effort. Like how much effort is this going to be to make this change or to bring this in and then to get rid of what we already had.
Mm,
Um, so so that's a great way to look at B2B buying behavior. I think that's a good framework because, and I was working on this with a client yesterday actually, which is it's the same thing, like looking at the value. How can we add to the value? How can we better communicate the value? It's sometimes you're better off thinking risk adjusted value as
mm.
opposed to value. And that was there is just like we addressed the risk instead of trying to pump up the value.
Exactly, because if you can't overcome the risk, they're never going to come to you at all.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
unless you can actually have a solution for it or communicate in a way that it is so low, why don't you really, like, come on,
Hmm.
why haven't you done it?
Hmm.
Then you're never ever going to get to the other three.
That's right. Yeah. But it's often overlooked.
I 100% agree. And I think in some instances, even if you bring this back down to like B2C, if I look at something as simple as a home loan, you have a home loan already, you've already got your house. To move banks is perceived by many people very hard, very difficult, labor, time, costly potentially, to fear factor of what happens if something goes wrong, will I lose my house, blah blah blah. All of those factors can go through people's heads, but in reality, it's in most cases it's low risk, easy, and there's processes in place to help you.
Mm.
And that's
Mm.
the message that banks, when they're doing it right, need to be able to say it's an easy,
Mm.
smooth process. We've got this form, you fill it
Mm.
out, we do the rest, or the broker does it for you, whatever it is. You just sit back and do nothing.
Mm.
And that's just bringing it back to a B2C concept,
Mm.
because you can reuse all of this there too. If you can't get over that risk and bring it down from a high risk to a low or to a no
Mm.
risk,
Mm.
they're not going to even consider the communications, think about, is that worth that savings,
Yes.
or go, you know what, the effort, no, 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 that's just too much for
Yes.
me.
Yes. And I think that's why like the perceived word's important to put in there
Mm,
because it might be low effort and it might be low risk, but it's not that. It's how it's perceived.
exactly. And
Yeah.
everyone perceives things differently.
Hmm.
And that would probably impact as well with all the science behind this, about where do you go when it comes to I suppose, the mass, because it's hard to do niche then. You need to
Mm.
really go for the mass appeal to get through to them so that they know that the risk is small, because going down to niche is going to be very difficult
Mm. Very
because
much,
there's,
I'd say. Yep.
yeah, too many different variables there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And what for yourself, out of those biopsychologies,
Yep.
which one do you love working on the most,
I, which one do I love working on the
or
most?
you find the most challenging but rewarding?
Mm, I think, yeah, challenging but rewarding. I think the effort piece is usually very
Mm,
hard to communicate. So that's the challenging aspect. What do I end up usually working on is the risk, actually. That's the really
mm,
common one that I come across that is not is not dealt with. But yeah, like I mean, you've got a good example there of the bank situation. Like, I mean, they're big companies potentially, and they still haven't communicated or got across that the effort's low. So
exactly.
yeah, I'd say that's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you have any other examples that you can share of how data and that scientific research has helped transform a business's approach to the marketing and the sales aspects?
Yeah, I do. Have, I remember I was working for this outsourcing company a few years ago, and I might have been around that time, but Ehrenberg Bass and the B2B LinkedIn Institute brought out data around which they called the 95-5 rule. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Do share more detail about it.
So in any B2B category, generally there's 95% of your customers are out of market at any given time. They're not going to buy now. It's not going to happen. 5% are generally in market. And looking at the data across categories, it's actually quite scary how law-like this is. So
Mm.
it was great research. This study was about 7,000 companies or so. It was a huge study, but I've seen that replicated, and Forrester have done some similar research. And it's a very powerful principle, I think, because it does get people thinking differently about how they should approach their growth. Because not only do are 95% out of market at any given time, of the 5% that are in market, 4% of that 5% go to a supplier they knew before coming
Mm.
into market. So
They've got that brand awareness or are using them. Yeah.
already, so you don't really have a shot at them now,
Yeah.
which
The
leaves
pie's
that,
smaller.
yeah, which leaves that 1% that is looking for vendors genuinely,
Yep.
and that also means that you're probably getting compared to a lot of vendors if you are targeting that 1%. You can feel it when you're in those sales conversations, like it's more focused on price.
Yeah.
They, yeah, it's a harder sell and you're getting compared to more people. So my advice generally is, and just the way I like to do business is you want to be in front of the 95% or a percentage of them so that when they come into market, they're likely to go with you. Um,
100%.
so
100% there.
So talking about podcasts, we were trying to get to CFOs a few years ago. This is a small company, very hard to get to. And what are we going to say to them that's going to, start to engage them, knowing that they're probably not going to buy now? So we set up a podcast, and we invited them on as guests. And
Clever, sneaky.
yes, and we did but they loved it. And we did an in-person podcast because it was engineered that you come in at 5 p.m., it's the end of your day. We do a podcast, you tell us your story, and then we go out for a drink afterwards. So
Nice.
it was a great way to spend 3 hours with an executive.
Yep.
You build a deep relationship and you also get so much market insight, and you also have a promoter generally by the end of it, you know.
And it's building out relationships there too.
Yeah. So I found that very powerful. That was a very profitable initiative there. We had nurturing processes, so we would put on a couple of events a year.
Hmm.
And so then we just invite them along. Again, not expecting anything necessarily at that time, but you want to stay engaged, you want to stay top of
Top of
mind.
mind. Yeah.
Yes. Um, and just have that personal relationship with them, ideally. So that's an example where you'd use the 95/5 rule to dictate how you'd approach your growth. That company and many others typically will go to a marketing agency and they'll start running ads. Like
Mm.
that's a typical way to go. But yep, you're competing for that 1% then, and yeah, it's very difficult. I've never seen it really work in B2B, especially for a smaller brand, because you get a few leads, they're usually not that good. It's the same story every time. So this approach I found to be far superior to that.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to that the personal touch there and bringing the emotion and connection, because I think a lot of people forget the value of connection.
Mm,
If you're able to connect to your audience and actually see them and they can shake your hand, have a drink with them, have a laugh, they're now starting to have more positive emotional connections to you. So then when they think of your brand in the future or a situation, it's a positive connection.
hmm
And that can really build to something over time, particularly if you repeat it. Like you said, you did events. If
mm,
they turned up to half of those events every year, that's continuing that positive connection so that when they are in market and turn
mm,
into that 4%, because
hmm
they won't
hmm
be in the 1%, they're now in the
Yes,
4% because they know
yes,
you.
yes,
And therefore, it's
exactly.
just an easier conversation to have.
I agree. I agree. And yeah, like it's a good point you make there around having the personal touch and because yeah, we did think a lot about the experience, and like you really want to give these people a great experience too, because
Mm.
that's representative of your brand as well. Like, what's it
Oh,
like
definitely.
to have this experience with you and with your brand? So yeah, that was always important to do a really good job of that. You know, you come in, we greet you straight away, we
Yep.
take you through, your drink's there ready to go, you've been prepped,
Yep.
you've all the things that contribute to just come along, we'll ask you questions, we'll take you for a drink. Don't worry
Yep.
about it. We got it. Yeah.
And if you're the next level smarts, you find out from the EA the favorite drink and have that ready on hand.
Oh, yes. Well, we didn't do that one. That's a good one. Yeah.
There you
All right.
go.
That
I've
that's
given you an
how.
idea for
Yes.
improvement.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And another tip,
hmm
um, food type. Are they vegan or meat lovers or
Mm,
whatnot? That can really throw a meeting to start off with, particularly if
mm,
you think you've ordered a vegan meal or a vegetarian meal, I should say more vegetarian, and they have egg in it.
mm,
Those kind of things can start a meeting off not the right way. And it's
hmm
depending on how you then pick it up. So always make sure, even if you are in those situations,
Yeah.
acknowledge, solve, and then
Yes.
move on in a positive way because that will be seen better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, you're on the back foot a little bit though, aren't you? If you
Yeah.
serve up the wrong thing out of the gate. But yeah,
Yeah. I've seen
interesting
that.
point.
I've unfortunately seen that one happen. Pure
Okay.
accident, but
Right.
not to me, but but I suppose this is a really good way to start thinking about. There's probably some other common misconceptions that do happen out in business when you're thinking about what their buyers and also the scientific connection for research and how it can be misunderstood. Have you
hmm
seen some common misconceptions out there that you'd like to debunk or talk about a bit more?
Yeah, look, I think one that comes to mind is around differentiation and it is scary when you look at some of the research about how many brands, and it depends how we define differentiation, but
Mm.
how many brands achieve true differentiation. And I'd probably encourage the listeners now to think about a few categories and in their own mind and think about how many of those brands are truly they see as different. Um, because yeah, differentiation, it's actually quite a hard thing to to achieve. And
Mm.
um, it's also important to focus on meaningful differentiation. So you can be different, but does the market care about that
Yeah.
difference? It can be done. Like it's not to say that it can't be done. I think often of the example. Do you know Karen's Diner? Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard what happened to the poor place as well.
Oh,
I would have
okay.
loved to have gone to it.
Same, same. I never got a chance to go, but that's fair to say they achieved differentiation,
Other
right? Like
people
they.
might not know what that is. Do you want to share
Hmm.
what Karen's Diner
Oh,
is?
true, yes. So it was a restaurant or a cafe, and they had a fair few in Australia. And basically, you go in and you're treated poorly by the wait staff, and you're insulted, and
You
they
don't want to order that. You're already a bit fat there.
yeah, yeah. Words to that effect, like
Yeah.
the opposite of what you expect from a
Yes.
hospitality venue typically, but different, like different. And, like I found it funny. A lot of people, some people didn't, but I certainly did. Sounds like you find it funny too.
Yeah. Well, it was all a play on the Karen character that is supposed to be the annoying, always bickering, causing problems. It was a caricature and trying to make a cafe out of it. So it was always done in very Aussie larrikin tongue in cheek way,
Hmm
not to be serious. So for anyone that's listening overseas, it's quite a known thing in Australia to take the piss out of each other. And if you are called a Karen, that means you're actually being a bit anti, I suppose, laughable. You're being a bit more of a, oh boy, we don't want to talk to her because Karen's just so annoying and saying the wrong things and really being a buzzkill. So that's what they were trying to bring to life with this really fun. I think it was a very fun loving type cafe.
Yeah, yeah. I love the concept myself, but yeah, but different, sure. Like can't no one can say they weren't different,
Exactly. Sadly, unfortunately, it didn't succeed. I'm
right?
not sure if it was. I can't remember what the impacts were, but unfortunately, it did close down.
Okay, all right. I actually didn't know that part, but
You know,
yeah.
I definitely think that one's a very good, meaningful differentiator as an
Mm,
example there,
mm,
because it wasn't something that other people were quick to copy,
mm,
and it was a space left free.
mm. Yes, and people wanted it. They had
Mm.
customers.
It's surprisingly, yes, repeat
Yeah,
customers.
yeah. So yeah, that was that's the example that comes to mind. And yeah, there's sometimes a brand, if you're not going to go after differentiation too, you need to think about distinctiveness and making sure that
Mm.
you're actually known. Um, yeah, I do come across like, what's your point of difference? Like these type of questions, but which is useful, but also, are we known? Like, does anyone know who we are?
Yeah.
Um, so that's where distinctiveness comes in the concept of coming to mind when someone comes into market, or when someone has a, is going to buy something. I've got an example in my personal life that I use to kind of explain the difference between these concepts of when I broke my laptop bag earlier this year. And it's like, okay, I need a new laptop bag. I've come into the market now.
Yep.
I've entered it. I need to fix this problem. Um, but I only thought about Officeworks when I was thinking about who to go buy this for. So I didn't compare it to anyone else. I didn't
Mm.
go, who should I go to? Because part of the value of brand to the consumer is that reduced cognitive cost. I
Mm.
don't have to spend time researching and finding this place. I'm just going to the one I know about. So I went to Officeworks to replace this bag. So that's distinctiveness. I didn't compare them to anyone else. They came to mind when I needed something. But when I get into store, that's when differentiation becomes important, because then I start looking at these bags and the size and they're all different brands within Officeworks, and comparing features
Yep.
effectively, and price as well. So that's how both concepts can play into the same sale. And
Mm.
I actually didn't really know, again, strange for a brand strategist, I didn't really know the brand that I bought from Officeworks. But I knew I went to Officeworks, so Officeworks gets the credit. They
Yep.
came to mind, and then at a different place in the buying journey, it was differentiation was what was important.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I had the exact same experience I think it was at the end of last year, early this year. I needed a laptop bag too,
Mm,
but I didn't want any old laptop bag. I wanted one to be in front of my clients.
mm,
So I wanted
mhm,
a nice one, not the Officeworks one. So for me, it was a struggle because I'm like, what brands do really nice leather um, laptop bags in the size of my laptop as well, where I
mm,
can just fit a small notepad into it? I don't want anything big and chunky. I want something quite elegant.
mm,
And I then had to go on this whole journey
mm,
because I didn't know. So I was
mm,
actually in that 1%.
mhm,
And I still remember walking into Maya, going up to the counter and saying, "Do you have laptop bags? Leather ones?" And the lady pointed at this most hideous, ugliest thing ever that was now their unisex range.
right. Okay.
And this is Maya. And I'm like, going, surely you've got a range.
Mm,
Surely you've got something that I can differentiate about, like different colors or different brands or different styles or anything.
mm,
No, that was it. The ugly beige unisex one that I don't know who would want to buy it. And I was surprised it wasn't on sale.
mm, mm,
So I was actually, I did eventually find one, everyone. It took a little bit more research, but I was just so surprised that even a place that you think like
mm,
Maya, where you'd expect them to have different types of laptop bags, even from the electronics division or whatever it might be,
mm,
there was none.
mm. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because yeah, there was an opportunity there for a brand to have to own that space too. Because when you're talking about that, what I notice as well, you're saying is you want to look professional in front of your
Yes.
clients. It's not just about convenience or features.
Mm,
This is how I want to, I want to feel like a professional. So,
exactly. And cost,
yeah.
there was no issue with cost there either.
Yep.
It was, I'm open to seeing what is there. This is an
Hmm.
investment piece because you
Hmm.
yourself, you probably didn't buy a laptop bag every year or every 6 months.
No.
It was an investment piece as well for you.
Yep.
So it comes along with all of those pieces when you're making
Mm-hmm.
that decision that they don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to your original point is a lot of the science is things that you don't see.
Yes, exactly. But
So
yeah, it's great to find it out.
definitely missed opportunity, Maya. Get a lot more laptop bags. You might be able to
Mm.
sell more, particularly in the city where you've
Yeah,
got people that probably break them and need to quickly replace them.
yeah, true,
Just a
true.
top tip there for you
Yep.
guys.
And want to feel professional.
Exactly.
Yes.
And if it is for work, tax write off as well, if it is for work, and mine is. Um,
Awesome.
what advice would you give to a business just starting to really delve into the science and behavior and the research with all this? Where would you begin when you first talk to your clients, or even when you're on your podcast talking to people about it?
Mm. The first question, I think, or the first place I like to start is asking the question, how do buyers buy in your category?
Mm.
It's a great place to start because a lot of brands, and we're all a lot of people, think like this because we're in our brands all the time, and it's only natural that we get a bit biased about yes and
Yeah, the
tunnel vision,
blinkers.
yeah, about what we do, and we start to focus a lot on what we do,
Mm.
which I call as part of the selling process. So the selling process involves what the company does, the ads, the webinar, the meetings, the demo, the podcast. Um, but it doesn't focus on what I'd call the buying process, which is what happens in the buyer's head, because that's not how they think. They don't think webinar, podcast, email. I'm going to open 5 emails and then I'm going to click buy. Like it's not how it works. So
Mm.
I'd say start with asking that question and starting to understand the way your category behaves. A good example, I think, here is understanding your inter-purchase period and your intra-purchase period. So I've got an interesting example around fridges here, where typically the inter-purchase period, this is a time that goes by when then someone's not thinking about buying a new fridge, is about 10 years often. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a long time between
Don't tell my
between
husband that.
fridges. Okay.
He
What,
wants
what,
one.
what is it for you?
He
2 years?
wants no, he wants a new one. We've had it for about almost 10 years.
Okay, yeah,
So
right.
don't tell him.
Yeah, you're getting there. You're getting there. This
I
is the
keep
stats
ignoring him.
say.
It's working. It's working. Go away.
The stats say. But there's that. But then there's also the intra-purchase period, which is how long someone is in the market before making a decision. We talk about fridges again, maybe around 10 days. So people go 10 years not really thinking about it much, and then in 10 days, they
Mm,
spend 10 days working out what they want. So in that category, and this is how a lot of the brands do approach it, but you're a bit more of a catch them as they fall type brand. Very difficult to, build brand in a category that people don't really care
mm.
about what what brand the fridge is. Um,
Cauliflower.
yeah, exactly. Over a long period of time, and yeah, and then they're only in market 10 days anyway. So they often will have an indirect distribution strategy. So they're in retailers and this type of thing
Mm.
where they want to be there when you're buying.
Yep.
And that's the way they approach it. But you can think about whatever company, whatever business you're in, whether you start to use the 95/5 rule, or just starting to understand how your category behaves, how
Mm.
they buy, and starting from there.
Yeah, I think it's one of the interesting things when you look at the whole funnel from when people, from a marketer's point of view, you've got that funnel of when you actually start telling people about your product versus when it's available, versus people are now buying it, it's now in market, and then the journey towards eventually it ending if it does end or the new
Mm.
version of it. I was recently at an event listening to the Kia GM of marketing, and they've decided to try something different this year in regards to advertising and getting attention for their new ute that they've got coming out. So traditionally, you wait until you've got all your beautiful images of your ute done. So you've got your 45 angle, your videos of it going up and down mountains, through water, getting dirty and muck on it, all this stuff. That's usually then when the first releases go out, the ads go out, and everyone finds out about it. They're looking at their funnel and they went, this is really saturated. There are so many people here. How do we get cut through? How do we get top voice when it comes to getting into all these different, like drive.com.au and magazines, people's attention, actually getting people to maybe want to discover more about the ute. So when they looked at that whole funnel, they went, you know what? We're actually going to tell people before we even have all the imagery done. We're going to do it as a preceding type campaign, if I use my own language there. But it's like preceding it. So they just went out and said, we're going to do a ute. And they started doing ads without a ute in it, with celebrities and influencers in a pub out in the outback talking about an awesome Kia ute. And the marketing CMO turned around and said to everyone, listen, this is one of our most successful campaigns, because instead of us getting, because of our metrics we had, because it's always important to have metrics, we wanted to shift our sales to be more out west, out where the people are that will use utes, not necessarily metro. And that is what they've seen with all the interest coming through, or the pre-sale or deposit taking that's been happening has shifted significantly to exactly what they wanted, because of how they positioned it being a different type of ad, where they're not focusing on the 45-degree, bit of tongue in cheek with it, and also how they've gone out to market as well and got that extra attention that they may not have gotten if they had have done traditional. So going about funnel, that's an interesting example of how, when you do look at your funnel and a lens of your competitors, how can you get the cut through for a type of distinctiveness, not a differentiator, but as you said, a distinctiveness, so that you get picked up more or get more top of mind, or even get a bit more time. So people are then more aware of you.
That's a really interesting example. I hadn't heard that, so thanks for telling me about that. But yeah, I think about that too when you're talking that through, and it sounds like they've really focused on, yeah, how you'll feel and who you'll become when you buy our brand. Like, this is what it's about, talking to your friends in the pub, and you can feel proud of yourself because you've got a Kia. So yeah, that's really interesting. I've heard one of the quotes I heard once was, a brand helps people become who they want to become. So yeah, whether I haven't seen the ad, I'm not sure of the imagery in that, but whether, yeah, they want to tap into, you're a bit more popular with your friends, or you fit in a bit better, or
It'll
this
do
is
the
what you
purpose
do.
you need.
Yes, yes, and this is what people out west do. This
Yep.
is how you're a people out west person. Yeah, interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, I think they've definitely done a good job of trying to understand who would want to buy that particular ute as
Mm,
well, which is
mm,
great. So again, an example of doing a good job of buyer behavior research.
mhm,
Yes, they've got a lot of money to do that, but if people think through, like you were saying about the buyer process, most businesses can afford to do that on a smaller scale,
mhm.
even if they do their own research, because there's so many tools and things now available online to help, plus your own data that you've got within your own systems.
Yep. Yep, agree. And I'd say with that point too, probably focus on salience, focus questions, as
Mm.
well as much as like your differentiator and your service or product-based questions, um because yeah, a lot of customer research I see that a company will do are, what do you value most about our product? Why did
Mm.
you choose us instead of the competitor? Um, yeah, is there anything else we could do you think, to make to make you happier? But they're not really that's not really focusing on what someone was experiencing just before they were buying the
Mm.
product. So what were they experiencing just before they came into market? How did you know that you needed to solve this problem? Who
What
did you
problem are you
consult?
solving?
Yes. Who did you talk to about this? What did you ask them? So really focusing on, yeah, that period of time just before they bought. can be really fruitful, and that can really help inform your
Mm.
comms and your growth strategy in general.
Exactly. And just going back again to the statistical significance. If if you're going with corn flour, you won't ask anyone really unless you've got a real baker or someone in the family. But the car,
Hmm.
you're going to probably ask quite a few people and
Hmm.
do quite a bit more with it. And having those salient questions will definitely help a brand understand and be in the right place at the right time more likely.
Hmm.
Hmm,
For sure.
love it. I know you love this topic because you've told us that you started off doing pharmacy, you've now
Yeah.
blended it because you
Yeah.
had that entrepreneurial spirit. But what excites you most about science involved in the buying process?
There's always more to learn. So, I'm constantly learning still all the time. For me, I respect, science is the quest for truth, and ideally for irreducible truth. Very hard to achieve, but that excites me. And truth is what, if you can use that to inform how people actually buy, will help you succeed, basically. So, there's always more to learn that excites me. It's, in my opinion, where you're going to get the most value because you're
Mm,
seeing the non-customers, you're seeing what's going on inside someone's head, you're seeing the way your category behaves. Um, and that, even if we go back to that 95/5 rule, if someone's not applying that in their B2B business at the moment, think about how much that would change the way you did things just on
mm,
that. And like, this is robust data, and this is well done studies, by the way. So it's quite, I'm quite comfortable recommending it. Um, but that's fascinating to me because you start with asking the right question. You start with asking, what are we going to do for out of market clients? What do we do for in
mm,
market clients? Are we going to target in market clients? It's just changes the paradigm of how a business or a growth function will approach their growth. Um, so yeah, look, when you get something like that, when you come across these rules, or these laws, it really changes the way someone will approach their marketing and sales, and that's amazing to watch and very rewarding to help, transition a business into sustainable growth, basically,
mm.
just because they
Exactly.
started listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also doing a new principle. So it's like
Mm.
almost a step change or game change for them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
I've really appreciated your time. I have a question I ask everybody before I do wrap up, and that is what brand, any brand in the world, best represents you and why?
I'm so glad you gave me the heads up on this question because I reckon if I was put on the spot for that, I don't know that I would have a good answer. Because, back to that scientific idea, I try to be brand agnostic. I try not to have favorites, and I try not to approach it in that way. Um, so the associations I have for myself as a professional are scientific, premium, and empathetic. And I'm like, okay, so I've got to find a brand that has similar associations. And I really struggled. And I think that I was really happy about that, that I couldn't find someone else who had the same combination of
Yep.
associations. It felt like you know, maybe they're out there
Well,
and someone's,
this is to you. This is how you feel about them. So you're always right with that answer.
yeah. So I thought, well, I'll look at it more as me as a person,
Yep.
as opposed to the professional me, I
Yep.
guess.
The individual larrikin. Yep.
Yeah. And a couple come to mind. I had one in B2C and one in B2B. B2C, Lego.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, iconic. I respect something that can last over a long period of time, and something that stays true to its fundamentals,
Mm.
which I think they've done, and I think that it represents nostalgia and also that creativity and fun, which I like to have in my personal life, but also in my professional life a bit.
Yep.
That's why I have my fun little play brand on the side, the Push, which is a fun brand to build, but it's my creative outlet as well.
Yep.
Um, and then on the B2B side more, I thought of HubSpot, and
Mm.
the reason for that was that I've heard from countless people, I haven't experienced this myself, that they will approach a meeting, and if you're not right for them, they will stop the meeting and stop wasting everyone's time. Which I was like, oh, I love that. I respect that.
Mm,
If we're not right for each other, let's not waste each other's time. Clearly, this isn't a good fit.
yeah,
We'll move on and we'll leave you to it. And I
the
really
honesty of
respect
it.
that. I respect that. Yeah. And I think it's a way to respect people's time and but also deeply understand what you are, which I is important to me too. Because a lot of the work I do is helping people understand what they are, or a
Mm,
brand understand what it is, and probably more specifically what it not is.
yeah.
Because yeah, like it can blow out at times. Oh, we're this, and this. And it's like, is that can you really be all those things? Probably not. So those are the two that come to mind: Lego and HubSpot.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. I find it's always a really interesting, fun exercise to do at the end, just to see everyone's different views and how they see some of the brands out there in the world too. Because I've come across some I've never heard of before as well.
Right.
So
Okay.
thank you so much for sharing.
No worries, and thank you so much for having me. I know how much effort goes into something like this, and yeah, it's very much appreciated that you'd take the time to talk to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm just going to do a quick wrap up, so don't go anywhere yet.
Yep.
So today we talked all about science and how you can bring that into the buying behavior to understand it, to make your business better, particularly to be able to grow your brand better as well. Because let's face it, there's a lot of companies out there that do similar things or the same things. So you really want to make sure you stand out for the right reasons. So differentiations or being distinctive are things that you really need to be able to understand. And with the science there and understanding your buyers and your buyer behavior better, then you'll be able to be more informed. So, as part of this, you've got to ensure that you yourself aren't being biased and not just relying on existing customers to make these informed decisions, because there's a whole lot of people out there that don't know about you or you don't know about. There's all these non customers. So, it's important to get some understanding about them, who they could be, and where they could be so you can make the right decisions. And that's where statistical significance can come in, depending on what your product or service is. Now, we gave some examples about somewhere it's quite easy. No one's really going to help you when it comes to buying corn flour, where when there's a car, yes, there'll probably be a whole pile of different ways and means that someone will do some research or discovery to learn more about it. So when you think of your buyer's experience, what are all those touch points that are beyond into the non-customer realm that you could be part of and be part of that conversation, so that when we go down to the 95-5 rule, then you're going to be in consideration for the future. Now, I'll talk about the 95-5 rule now because I find that one really fun. So this means that 95% of the time, a person is not in market right now to purchase whatever you have, whether it's a service or product. Only 5%, the remaining one, equaling 100%, the remaining 5% is. But, and this is a big but, 4% of that 5 have already decided in their head who they're more than likely going to go with because of either past associations or being aware of them. So you've only got 1% that are truly looking, and they're more likely going to be comparing as well, which means it's going to be very saturated for you. So yes, put effort into that 1% and always cultivate that 4% if you do have that existing relationship with them, because you want to make sure you nurture those people. But with that 95, you really don't want to forget about them. You want to make sure that you're at touch points that make sense for future decision making. Because if you're around in the funnel journey for them for the 95% time, when they turn into that 5%, they're going to move into the 4%, not the 1, because you're already going to be top of mind for them, which makes things so much easier for you when it comes to the conversion funnel. Personal touches can make a difference where appropriate through this as well, particularly in a B2B context, because you're able to have more of that one-to-one relationship in many of those instances. So definitely think and see how you can bring that to life for your service or product that you're doing, particularly if you're B2B, because having those connections and that emotion will have, as long as it's positive, everyone, will have a positive impact into the future when they come into the market to be looking for that renewal of the service or a tender going out or whatever it is. They're going to think of you more than likely than someone else. Now, biopsychology is really interesting. It's a place that everyone needs to be aware of, particularly when you're thinking about the buyer and where they're going to be and what you need to overcome. Because really, your product or service is solving a problem, and they can't solve their problem without you or your competitor. So you want you to be the one that's going to benefit, not your competitor, right? So some of the principles that were shared today by Jack for particularly B2B, but can be used for B2C, is making sure you communicate your value. So why are you important? What makes you so good at what it is that you've got? So that solves that problem. 2, you actually understand their problem, and you're motivating them to go to you or use you to solve that problem because you really do tick all those boxes for them. So you've been able to communicate that you are solving a problem. And one of the ones that I think is very important is reducing the perceived risk to move. So not only do you understand their problem, but you understand that they may have reservations, but you have already solved it for them by how you're communicating, because you can make it easy. You've got a form, you've got a person that can help them. Whatever it is, you can overcome all their barriers for them. And it's a no-brainer to go to you because you can help them solve their problem and maybe some other benefits of value that you're communicating, like saving money, saving time, getting something done quicker for them. All those values can be put through. But ultimately, you've got to make sure that the effort that they perceive isn't effort at all, that it's just going to be so smooth. You've maybe even you've got testimonials, reviews, or whatever it is to support you on this, or stats, or even better, so that they understand that doing this change is going to be easy, low risk. I'm getting some value out of it, and it solves my problem. I love this. I'm going to move. If you can do all 4 of them, you're onto a winner, and your team will keep growing and your clients will be happy and they'll tell more people as well. So therefore, you'll move into the 4%. So it all keeps going back to each other. It's one of the things I loved was also talking about, is there a differentiator? Is it something distinctive? Understand those differences and understand how they can be both. We use the example of the laptop bag today, but it's about, if you're doing a differentiator, you really want to achieve something that is pure and meaningful and not on the, I suppose, the woke journey in a sense. You really want to stand for that and be the only one. But in this day and age, there are so many easy to copy things that we do, easy to mimic, easy to change out and be almost similar to it. So be distinctive. And how can you be distinctive? It's what you're known for. So you're known for great service, great quality, doing it better. You compare your features and your features work for them as well. So make sure you look at the distinctiveness of what you've got if you can't do pure differentiation. Now, some of the things that you could do when you're buying and in your buying category and you want to do things a bit different, think about the selling process itself, what your team is doing. How are they making sure that you're distinctive out there to be in that 4%? Is it meetups, demos, advertising, all those things? But then think about the buying process itself. We were told about the inter-purchase period, which is when people aren't really thinking about buying anything because it's working for them. They're fine. Your fridge was the example. Your fridge is just there. It's working for you, whatever. Most people might not even know what fridge brand they've got. It's just an item. But then you've got the intra-purchase period. And that is what I would call the research period. It could be 1 hour. It could be 10 days. It could be 10 months. And this is where the person has a need, has a problem, and they're out there looking to have it solved. And that's where you need to understand where they are in their funnel journey so that you can have the right messaging, the right education, whatever it could be at that time, to be able to help them make that informed decision and hopefully go to you. I've loved our conversation today, Jack. I think everyone needs to know how to see the non-customer, that 95%. There is so much gold there that people can be doing that long tail marketing effect for, so then it comes to fruit in the future. and also understanding your category itself when buying to know what that funnel looks like, what people's needs are. And again, the communicating the value, the pain, lowering that risk perception, and also the effort to change. Did I miss anything, Jack?
I don't think so. I think that sums up a lot of what we went through today. Yeah, I'd encourage people just not to be intimidated by these
Mm.
words like science and this type of thing. It just means seeking truth. It
Yep.
just means,
Using numbers and data.
yep, accessing numbers and data, yeah, to find out, yeah, more about your category and your buyers. So start asking those questions, and I think you'll find some interesting answers, anyone who's listening to this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jack. And don't forget to check out Jack on LinkedIn to learn more. He also has the podcast, The Push. It explores marketing, sales problems, and solutions that startups, scale ups, and medium sized companies face. So you'll get a lot of gold out of there too. So I highly recommend you to follow him, and I'll put it in the show notes for everyone. Now, everyone else, don't forget to add more to marketing to your playlist so you don't miss out on future fabulous guests. And most importantly, share this podcast if you can. More to marketing.